Welcome back. You're watching K+, and these are the news from Kazakhstan. Today is Tuesday, March 27, and I'm Max Bagashev. Coming up. Natalia Sokolova, the ex-lawyer of Kazakhstan company, gave her first press conference after the release from prison.
Yet the statements I made did contain social strife messages. It is sad to admit, but it is true.
US President Barack Obama endorses the possibility of placing a nuclear fuel bank in Kazakhstan. He met with President Nazarbayev while in Seoul, South Korea. The final decision over the uranium issue will be revealed during the summit. Almaty Airport Technical Center staff rallied the aviation prosecution demanding to clear payment arrears. The former lawyer of the Kazakhstan oil workers' labor union, Natalia Sokolova, called her first press briefing yesterday after being released from prison. On February 28th, the General Prosecutor's Office filed a petition with a request to reconsider Natalia's sentence of 3 years to a suspended sentence with a probation and a ban on all kinds of public services. The activist, who voiced criticism towards idling officials from the very beginning, was charged with inciting social hatred. After almost 10 months of imprisonment, Natalia Sokolova filed a petition to reduce her sentence after a full and sincere acknowledgement.
I realized in the long run that the critical information I disseminated had a truly negative impact and probably heated up the situation. It didn't have the goal of bringing it to the levels it reached in May, and I tried to mitigate the situation within the limits of the law. Yet the statements I made did contain social strife messages. It is sad to admit, but it is true. The press briefing wasn't an easy thing for Sokolova. It was obvious that she was worried. Natalia realized that her case can be the precedent and a reason to prosecute those accused of promoting social strife as a result of the tragedy in Zhanaozen. When answering reporters' questions, the lawyer stated that she has no plans for leaving the country and was currently seeking a job. She cannot continue serving in the labor union as it is prohibited according to the sentence. She will not be able to make it to today's trial due to family circumstances. In her answers, Natalia thanked all those who supported her through the hard times and sympathizes with oilers accused in regards to Zhanaozen events. It goes without saying that I'm thankful to the representatives of the international human rights organizations which participated in my release from custody and appealed to authorities, but in my case I believe that the decision taken by the court and the opinion of sovereign authorities did not in any way depend on the opinion of the international organizations. My repentance had a really great influence as compared to other factors. The most tragic events are always hard. It is not an easy thing to assess them now. It is both emotionally hard and sad. The case I'm incriminated with does not only imply the consequences of those activities, but also causes a promotion of social strife. If a person disseminated critical information that contained calls for action, destabilizing the social order and all those things I mentioned, this is unfortunately considered a social strife.
Natalia Sokolova was dismissed and then put under arrest for taking part in a protest action and strike arranged by Kazakhstan oil workers in May last year, when Sokolova was talking to workers about their rights. For that, the activist was charged with inciting social hatred. The trial started on the 28th of July and was held in Aktau. Sokolova stood up for the oil workers' position, insisting on impairment of their rights, saying that salary rates are unreasonably understated in comparison to the expatriate employees. The activists denied prosecution claims and said that arrangement and participation in trade union is the legal right of the laborers and not a criminal act. However, the court still sentenced Sokolova to 6 years of imprisonment on August 8. Her husband Vasily Chepurnoy says that Sokolova was under pressure and was forced to admit misconduct while being recorded. Natalia has an infant child, and this is likely why she accepted the charges after 10 months of imprisonment, say social activists. A well-known Kazakh film director, Bolat Atabayev, was not surprised with Sokolova's acknowledgement. He said that she has kids she must protect, and the fear behind her actions is nothing but the sign of the state's authoritarian rule. At the same time, Atabayev, who is also charged with inciting social hatred, does not see himself making similar deals. I would never give up. Moreover, I will further promote the Zhenozem issue around the globe. Right now I'm writing a play, and its characters are real people who are willingly and with abandon carry out the will of the authorities. Polat Atabayev posts his opinion about Zhenozem through social media on a regular basis. He openly claims that no one actually believes in the fair court proceedings on the case, which will start today. It's rather an order by the authorities, and the investigators are ruining people's fates, say the film director, basing this opinion upon his personal experience of being interrogated by the National Security Committee just recently. That had inspired Atabayev to write a play exposing the system and its agents, since the director now believes that president's opponents have nothing to fear. Worse enemies than NSC are simply too hard to come by. These state bodies actually raise people's hatred towards the authorities. They do not do any prevention work, nor do they monitor or research the political or economic situation. They became punishing bodies instead, and therefore people are outraged by them. The trial over the organizers of Zhenozem and Shetpe riots on December 16 was moved from the Repatriates Adaptation Center to the Arman Youth Center, since the second venue is significantly big. It has to fit 37 accused, more than 100 victims and 45 witnesses. The hearing started this morning and was announced last night by Oksana Peters as Supreme Court representative.
The necessary conditions and additional seats for the trial observers, including families of victims and defendants, representatives of human rights organizations and other interested parties, were provided for publicity and transparency in legal trials, as well as for comprehensive and fair legal investigation. In spite of the Supreme Court assuring publicity and transparency in legal trials, community leaders note that it is hard to trust Kazakh legal system in this matter. Typical examples are notorious legal cases when relatives of the persons involved repeatedly claimed violations. Lyudmila Ten, the wife of the previously imprisoned Erjan Utimbayev, the former administrative head of the Kazakh Senate, holds the same opinion. She is confident that impartial proceedings are just unrealistic expectations. Just like with Nurkadilov and Nurbank GSC, this case will not get a fair trial. It is not even the matter of justice, but trials must be held within the law, whereas here it is absolutely not the case. That is my opinion.
The current situation in Kazakhstan is reminiscent of the one in Poland in the 80s, when the opposition was really suppressed by the authorities, say members of the European Parliament. The main topic of discussion at the Warsaw Conference in the massacre during the Zhenozem riots and the pressure felt by the Kazakh opposition. The discussion was attended by the recently released from prison journalist Igor Vinyavsky and the wife of imprisoned politician Vladimir Kozlov.
According to Aliya Turzbekova, European MPs have a dual impression of Kazakhstan. The official sources claim that human rights and freedoms are being adhered to. Meanwhile, the meeting in Poland capital revealed facts undermining that statement. On March 25th, the oppositionist's wife received 2 rejections in a row. A late one from the prosecutor's office related to her request made back in January to allow her see and render medical aid to Vladimir Kozlov, and the second one from the National Security Committee department refusing her the right to communicate with the imprisoned husband.
Очень многих с депутатами Сейма встречались.
We've met quite a few deputies and talked about human rights and events in Zhenozem, as well as the way they are being investigated. MEPs were all shocked about Zhenozem case and the conditions in detention facilities, specifically in the National Security Committee. Cells there are only 2 by 4 meters wide. There is no water source or a sanitary unit. Toilet visits are on strict schedule in the morning and at night. The rest of the time the inmates have to use a bucket in the corner. It all came as quite a shock to the deputies because this openly violates international agreements ratified by Kazakhstan. Similar prison treatment and humiliating human dignity is actually considered torture elsewhere.
Members of the European Parliament, including Poland representative Piotr Borys, who personally visited Zhenozem, say they will demand Kazakh authorities to give a clear explanation behind the shooting of oilfield workers during the strike. At a Warsaw press conference on March 22nd, Borys said members of the European Parliament will follow the investigation launched recently against the opposition, including Vladimir Kozlov. Boris recalled the European Parliament appeal to Kazakh authorities to incline towards the democratization. Moreover, European Union had issued a resolution on the situation in Kazakhstan in which it clearly calls upon the president to sign a number of laws to enhance the legal base for labor relations, public dialogue and judiciary independence. The European legislator says foreign observers over the Zhanaozen case are being recruited at the moment. Marjana Spandiarova, a presidium member of the National Social Democratic Party Azad, will have to pay over $500 to the state treasurer for taking part in the rally on March 24th. The ruling was made yesterday by Judge Turgumbayev. Spandiarov's supporter Bulat Abilov left the courtroom in protest during the announcement of the verdict. According to the prosecution case, Marjana Spandiarova committed a civil crime under the infamous Article 373 by participating in a public rally. During the debate, she noted that the government should opt for negotiations instead of imposing penalties and finally designate a location for the already traditional Days of Dissent, which should definitely be somewhere downtown. The Social Democrat concluded that the officially approved park behind the Saryarka movie theater in the suburb of Almaty is no longer sufficient for the opposition. Meanwhile, the hearings for the rest of the protest rally participants, journalist Kasım Amanjol and the Journalists in Trouble Foundation head Ramazanov Esergepov, will be held today. The judgment delivered today was expected. I reiterate that both the judge and the attorney are baffled. They literally don't know how to react and what to do to us. They understand that 15 days of jail have only made Abilov and Kasanov stronger. They have not changed their position. They have confirmed readiness to lead people, and the protests will rise. According to some estimates, the picquet in Almaty on March 24th devoted to 100 days since the Mangistau tragedy was attended by around 400 people, while the number of protesters during the previous rally on February 25th was as high as 1,000. Political expert Viktor Kovtunovsky says the drop-off show that people are afraid of possible violent suppression of their actions. At the same time, it's a good sign that many are still ready to express their position publicly.
Who's to blame here, really? This is like a mirror, and what we have is a reflection of our society. Still, we have some improvement. A rally like this in the center of Almaty with same amount of people would have been impossible just a year ago.
US President Barack Obama welcomed the goodwill of Kazakhstan in regards to placing the International Nuclear Fuel Bank on its territory. Obama and Kazakhstan's President Nursultan Nazarbayev met yesterday during a nuclear security summit in South Korea. Akorda website reports that during the talks, Obama and Nazarbayev shared their views concerning the nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament and discussed the development of bilateral partnership. The president of Kazakhstan presented Obama with a Kazakh tumar, a sort of good luck charm, while expressing support of the new US nuclear strategy and inviting Obama to the 4th summit of the leaders of world and traditional religions in Astana. Obama in his turn named Kazakhstan as the model of nuclear disarmament for the whole world and endorsed the idea to locate nuclear fuel bank on the territory of the country. The summit will give an opportunity to debate many issues, in particular Kazakhstan's activity regarding highly enriched uranium, plutonium, and also support to create an international nuclear fuel bank in Kazakhstan, which will reduce the need for other countries to independently enrich nuclear materials. And Kazakhstan plays a leading role in this regard, Obama said. Kazakh president will make his official speech today. The nuclear fuel bank, in case of approval by the international community, will be constructed by International Atomic Energy Agency by 2013. The body of 19-year-old soldier Azim Abdullayev was finally brought home yesterday morning. According to the military command, Abdullayev, who was drafted only 3 months ago, was mentally unstable and committed suicide. The soldier's family and enlistment office completely disagree with such assessment.
Azim was the second child in the large family of Abdullayevs. For a long time he was looking for a job but was asked for a military service certificates everywhere he went. After having debated this issue, the family decided Azim should join the army. My friend has graduated from a college and needed a military service record card as no one would employ him without it. That is why he volunteered for the army. The tragedy struck on March 23rd at 6 a.m. Servicemen heard a gunshot from a location where Azim was supposed to be on guard. At that hour, it was a suicide. The military unit commander skipped to this version of events and suggested that Azim was mentally unstable. They told me he was mentally deranged and that he shot himself. How come they've accepted him to the army then? He had passed all 4 medicals. And then they phoned his mother and told her to collect her son, that it would be better to do so by plane. Is this humane? The commander of Saragash enlistment office stated the opposite. Azim was perfectly healthy and numerous medical examinations, including psychological tests, can verify that. He was absolutely healthy and he took another psychological test there in the military unit. That is why his military command trusted him. He was on duty guarding the facility. So it doesn't sound likely for him to take his own life. The comments of the Atyrau military unit command appear indistinct and rather limited. I feel too distressed now myself. As Azim's parents recollect, just before the tragic events, he had phoned his loved ones, joked and laughed a lot. That is why none of the family members believed that he might have possibly taken his own life. Then, after the soldier's body was brought home, new suspicions arose. There's no way my brother could have taken his own life. He is not the type of person to do such a thing. It looks like he was beaten, tortured and driven to suicide. There were bloody bruises under his eyes. The prosecution office and the military investigation department are looking into the causes of death of a private, Azim Abdullayev. His family hope for fair investigation and demand to punish those responsible.
A closed trial over the supposed terrorist cell responsible for several recent blasts in Kazakhstan was opened yesterday in Atyrau. However, not all defendants will be present, since some of them are abroad and the investigation does not reveal any information about their whereabouts.
All defendants are charged with terrorism, terrorist propaganda, creating and controlling a terrorist cell, as well as financial support of extremism. The case unites 2 separate incidents. One relates to a series of terrorist attacks in Atyrau and neighboring regions with 42 suspects under the trial, and one of them shot dead in August last year, supposedly while resisting the arrest. Another one is linked to several blasts in October of last year at the Atyrau Rural Administration and Prosecutor's Office. In one of these attacks, a suicide bomber detonated an attached device. 5 suspects are under trial in this case.
The staff of the Almaty's Airport Technical Center held a rally yesterday demanding to clear salary arrears, which accumulated to over $400,000 in the last 10 months.
The employees filed suit against the airport management in the Turksip district court and won the case. The last year, airport management and employees signed a memorandum whereby its president promised to clear errors in payment. However, about 100 employees still not received their money. Desperate people directed a letter to Nuratan Party, but their fight for justice failed. We asked the airport director or Nursultan Nazarbayev to pay us our money. We do not want the situation in Sarashagan to repeat. We will not deal with it, but we want to get our salaries peacefully. Upon interview with journalists, the protesters went to the Air Technical Prosecutor's Office. Department Officer Baurjan Akbirbayev reminded the employees that their protest is unauthorized and then promised to clear salary arrears before June. The airport management undertook to arrange payment and already paid almost $17,000 out of $406,000, which means the payment is in progress. For the other case, we have stated enforcement proceedings in the Aviation Technical Center to conduct asset evaluation, arrange tender and allocate the amounts payable to the employees.
Miners in Karaganda have to fight for their health benefits in court. The problem with legal inconsistencies was created by the Korgal labor union when it initiated the signing of a collective agreement, leaving non-payment loopholes for the employer.
Former shaft miner of Tentekskaya mine Nikolai Ivashin lost his health at the time when the old collective agreement was still in place. It stated that the compensation of 5 annual salaries was awarded only to miners with injuries of up to 80%. That wasn't the case with Ivashin, so he was left with nothing. I was stuck in between these two agreements and received nothing. We feel this is not fair, and I'm not the only one who feels this way. The new document was left with several loopholes that prevent miners from collecting full health benefits. For instance, moral damages are compensated only when a primary disease is established, while there is no monetary provision set for secondary examinations, even though the deterioration of health should be covered by even more benefits. Many injured miners were not subject to clause 8.10 of the collective agreement, which we consider a violation of their constitutional rights. A state inspector is involved in the hearing as an expert. He will have to explain to the court how exactly the Department of Control and Social Protection could approve the collective agreement, which contradicts the Civil Code, law on protection of rights of the disabled, as well as the Constitution. No one is violating human rights and the rights of the disabled when the Civil Code allows the victim to sue the employer for incurred injuries and then be compensated for moral damages. The state inspector says the disabled miners should go to the court, which they are already doing anyway. But why would anyone approve a collective agreement which results in disputes in the first place? This question was still unanswered and then forwarded to the Gorgau labor union. Those individuals who applied for compensations for the moral and health damages will have to prove their ways and approaches to this issue due to the fact that they are demanding monetary rewards. It looks like lost health is not the last of miners' problems anyways, and now thanks to the labor union they have to find special ways to approach the employer. In reality there is only one way here, through the court, which luckily sided with Nikolai Vashin. This is not the first victory of the miners' family. Now the workers are planning to sue the Gorgau labor union and demand financial compensation for the creation of the enslaving agreement.
Heads of 14 farms in Pavlodar region are ready to picket the local court. For 3 years, farmers are not given any refund for grain that went bad in one of the regional grain points. At the same time, the court does recognize several victims in the situation, but for some reason they are not farmers, but the Food Corporation and Grain Intervention Pool.
Pre-trial investigation authorities didn't recognize us as victims in the criminal case. This means that the victims are the joint stock company Protkorporatsiya and Zernovoi Intervenционный Pool, the LLP that the grain was sold to. Basically, Protkorporatsiya sold the grain to the LLP in question. The intricate story on the lost grain and its owners started 3 years ago. From 2009 to 2010, roughly 20,000 tons of grain went bad on the territory of the Kachirsky Grain Reception Center. Immediately after that, the heads of the local farms have all claimed the crops to be their yield, since the harvest is brought there without intermediaries. Nevertheless, the investigation agency claims that the grain in question belonged to joint stock company Protkorporatsiya. Several criminal cases have been instigated regarding the loss of grain, although farmers were never mentioned as the ones who actually incurred losses. Now farmers are threatening the authorities with a picket near the court that will hear the case. We want to hold a protest within the limits of the law to assert our rights. Our employees are behind us and they are demanding their wages to be paid. They are all willing to come to the city and express their resentment in regards to the situation.
Strong winds last night torn several flags over buildings in Astana. Interestingly, journalists were first to notice that there was something wrong with the state symbols.
The first torn flag was flying on the roof of the Almaty District Tax Department. The second one was atop the Governance Committee on Legal Statistics and Special Records at the Prosecutor General's office. The employees are at a loss to say when exactly the flags were damaged and for how long they had been hanging like that. They say the ice on the roads makes them pay more attention to what's under their feet rather than above their heads. The situation was fixed by the end of the day when both flags were replaced. It appeared the government has reserve flags for similar emergency situations. This is not the first time the national symbols have been damaged by weather. 4 years ago, the main flag of the country, the size of 20 by 40 meters, was torn by storm wind. Last year, the flag's staff hoister broke down and the sheet was resting at the bottom for a few weeks. The damage was caused by heavy winds. The flag was replaced as soon as we found out about it. The flags are not replaced often. We do really care and watch out for our flags. They are the most precious things we have.
This is all we have time for now. Make sure to join us tomorrow for more. Thank you for watching and goodbye.